Favorite Elkhorn Blackshirt. Oh boy. Now we are in the office. It is Jay Moore, who joins us every Wednesday during the football season from Big Red Wrap Up and many other things, including last week he was on his way to go golfing. Now he's back. Good morning.
Morning, guys. How we doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm in the office, early this morning.
We got a big project. What are we doing?
Yeah, I got some meetings after this. So yeah, I've got a busy day. Just got to get on top of some stuff, and I had to get the kiddo off to school early. He wasn't too happy about it, but it is what it is, and yeah, got crap to do.
All right. The polo is from what golf course?
This is from Pine Valley.
Not bad. Not bad.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a subtle flex for the listeners today. But no, it's my favorite place I've ever been. So I've been fortunate to make a couple trips up there. So it's incredible. It's my favorite. It's the best one I ever played. I think I don't know the rankings. It's number one, number two, I think nationally. So yeah, it's tough to beat.
All right, let's jump into Thursday night. Most important thing at the end of the day is Nebraska is 1-0. But how should we feel about Nebraska beating Cincinnati by 3 to be 1-0?
Yeah, I think there's you can be happy. You can be happy about it, but you can also be knowing that there's things to work on, and you can be somewhat unsatisfied with it. I think you can look at it from you can be very optimistic on it, or you can be rather pessimistic if you want. I mean, if you want to be optimistic about it, it's like, hey, Nebraska's won a one-score game. We've been in that situation plenty of times where the team that's down has the ball with a chance to either tie to go into overtime. We know how we've played in overtime in the past, or they go on to win. And Nebraska figured out a way to get it done. And Malcolm Hartzog with a guy that gave up a first down or had on the fourth down play. I think it was his guy that caught the ball and then had the penalty, but then he makes a big play in the end zone. So Nebraska found ways to win in years past. They found ways to probably lose that game. We know you can say what you want about Cincinnati. I think they're a darn good football team. I think just how they finished last year, I think people underestimated them, but they got talent. Sorsby's a heck of a player. We know what Corleone can do. Wide receivers, tight ends. They got some good players you can recruit to Cincinnati. So that's one way optimistic to look at it. But if you want to look at it from a negative, pessimistic, you got to think, well, the offense didn't score enough points. Not enough points in the red zone. Scoring, look at all the opportunities they had. Some penalties at key times down there defensively, the front seven, which we kind of thought might be, we had a lot of question marks for. And I think there still is a lot of question marks at that position going forward. But I think, first and foremost, I'm happy with how they battled. And it's the first game. It was the first game for a lot of new coaches on the staff. It was the first game for a lot of new players on this roster. And overall, yeah, every game there's always things to improve on, and I'm glad we can finally have a way things to improve on after a win, because a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that's probably a loss in front of a very dominant Nebraska crowd in Arrowhead. And you said exactly that they're 1-0, and you're trying to get ready for Akron, and I mean they know it's down the road, and I hope this is a very young football team still, that the maturity is there, that they focus on Akron, they focus on Houston Christian, because we know it's coming in a couple weeks. So, but they got to take care of Akron first.
The defensive line obviously was a massive talking point going into the game, massive talking point coming out of the game. No sacks, 9 hurries, only 2 tackles for loss. Jay, watching the tape, do you think that there's a pretty clear gap between the best front four Nebraska can put out and the next front four Nebraska puts out?
I don't think there's a huge gap. I just think they got to figure out how they want to operate. This is one thing I'm always was concerned with the 3-3-5 was this is what Tony White did a bunch of this last year, and it hurt them at times, was your ability, the movement they like to do up front. This is in the 3-3-5, you are crisscrossing, you're shooting gaps, you're overlapping, you're bringing linebackers, and it's aggressive. And if you aren't disciplined and footwork and gap assignment and pad level and hand placement, teams are going to get you. And that happened early. I think it was a first or second play. Nebraska tried to run something, and Elijah Judy tried wrapping around, and he got pushed 10 yards in the backfield. I mean, that's first thing I go, oh gosh, that was what was my biggest concern. Um, I understand why you have to do it. But I think you can get a little too creative and a little too aggressive with some of those calls. I think back to the Indiana game last year, and that game was a disaster. But Nebraska did a lot of that and just got killed. And I don't like that. I think they got to figure out ways to do that. If you feel like, I don't know, with this 3-3-5, I'd almost rather them bring down an extra linebacker, almost put another defensive lineman in there. If you feel like you have to do so much,
Sure.
but against a mobile quarterback, and I've played plenty of them in my time, or good running teams, you can stunt your way into trouble. And a lot of times, I remember our playing mobile quarterbacks and really good run teams. We just ran a lot of base stuff. We put our gaps, and we just held a position at the point of attack. We got off the block and made a play. When you start doing some things, you can take yourselves out of plays really easily. I think Nebraska found that out early, and they got exposed a little bit too. It's the first game. Your wind, your conditioning's a little off. You don't trust your eyes as much in the first game to what you maybe had seen, because your film where you're watching on Cincinnati is from last year.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. I think there's plenty of talent there. They just got to figure out who can do it consistently day in and day out. This is now you're getting to the season. It's easy to get up for the first game, but now you get to start throwing school in the mix, and you can start feeling a little bit more sorry for yourself about how hard it is. It's going to be interesting to see who's going to do it consistently week in, week out. And those guys are continuing the guys that do it week in, week out are going to play, and I think play at a much better level than what we saw on Thursday night.
Should we also, and I agree with you, and I heard you, Michael, and Sean last night talking about the defensive line and some of the things, and what John Butler said earlier in the day. Do we also need to factor in that this was the first time in a while that John Butler has been in charge and he's calling plays as a defensive coordinator?
I think so. I mentioned it last night. This was the first game for a lot of this staff too, and I'm guaranteeing you there's a handful of calls that whether it's Butler or Holgerson or Eckler, whoever it is, the main three coordinators, that they're like, dang, I wish I didn't do that. That was a bad call. You probably have multiple calls every game where you're kicking yourself. But this being in this role, last year obviously just being more in charge of the secondary, I'm sure he's not happy with how he called the game at some point. But I'm sure there's a lot of it goes both ways. The players need to execute too, but also the coaches need to make the right calls and put them in the right positions to make a play. So it does go both ways. But I think there's a little bit of that too. I mean, it's been a minute since he did this. Last year he was just worried about the secondary and had Tony White out there doing his thing. Now it's a lot more pressure and responsibility to make the right calls with a lot of guys who were in this defense last year. And we finally got some good tape and some good film off of, I always call them live bullet reps, right? It's one thing to see what they can do in practice when, it does matter, but if you mess up, it's okay. You can you think you can fix it, but now it's like, hey, you got to see how guys focus when they're tired. How can they execute when they're tired? And certain calls against certain reps of looks or whatever it is. It's a great opportunity this week to teach off of this. And, it's always a hype, the cliche saying, the biggest improvements from game 1 to game 2. And it's very, very true. But yeah, I think the players, but also the coaches are going to improve on as how they call a game and how they handle it in game as well.
So kind of going off that point, I look back and when you were playing at Nebraska, your teams played Nicholls State and Maine and Western Illinois. And by the way, kudos to you guys because you guys played some pretty hard non-con schedules too. So it's very different now to where we are when you were playing back then. But you guys could play some of these non-majors FCS teams. I'm just so curious, what was the mindset for you heading into that game and just how important was that for your development? And did you kind of go in there thinking, all right, maybe I'm going to do some things that I don't typically do because I need to practice?
No, I think we are always, our staff was really hard on us to make sure you approach every opponent the same way. The only game I can recall where I was like, oh my gosh, I just want to get in and out of this was we played Nickel State my senior year before we went to USC. We opened up the season against Louisiana Tech, took care of them. We had Nickel State the following week. I think we had USC at USC the third game of the year. So, and Nickel State was a team where, I mean, they ran like the triple option wishbone. In the week of practice, it's brutal. I mean, the way you have to prepare for a team like that versus a normal, at that time, more Big 12 spread was vastly different. I mean, I was almost playing a four technique, which is head up and tackle to make sure the tackles couldn't get to the second level, and it was a tough couple weeks of practice or a couple days of practice. So that's the only one I was like, get me in, get me out, and we took care of business. And I was like, I just want to go get ready for this USC game. There's potential that some of these guys could be thinking that because with Michigan in the next two opponents,
Yeah.
in the next couple weeks. So, but I try to approach it all the same way. It was very important for myself and my teammates to take care of the business Monday through Thursday. You got to approach it the same way. It's the reps are important. If you don't approach it great Monday through Thursday, Saturdays usually don't end up very well for you. So
Sure.
That's just a maturity, and that's how you have to go about things. And Nebraska still is a very young team, so that's a little bit of can be a concern. But I think Coach Rule and the staff, and I think the culture of the team will trump that concern for me. But yeah, it's having the right mindset. No matter who you play, you want to go out and perform your best. You don't want to go out there. First home game, night game. The crowd's gonna be on. It's gonna be electric. So you want to go out and perform well for the home crowd. I'm not as concerned as accurate as maybe as the Houston Christian game. 11 a.m. kick in a couple weeks. That could be a little sleepy start, but I think this team's in the right mindset going forward Saturday night.
Hey, played the defensive guy here because, in that game, and Holgerson brought it up yesterday, and I don't know if it was considered dirty, but he talked about the hit that Barney took, where Barney basically got bent in half early in the game Thursday night on a tackle, and then Bonner got hit, and he's out for the season with the torn ACL. And it was a low tackle. Holgerson addressed it yesterday, and this was his quote, Jay. That's the lowest tackling bunch I've seen in a long time. I'm not criticizing. That's not to criticize. It has to be taught to tackle low. Did you see it as they're taught that's the way they go, or we tackle low because if we go high, we're going to be thrown out of the game? How did you see the tackling that Cincinnati was utilizing?
Yeah, I put myself in the defense. I mean, it's so hard anymore I think anymore as when you're coming, and especially in those positions, guys come from the secondary. When you're coming from depth with a lot more speed, you have to go low, in my opinion. I never once was, I think it's too hard to get a guy down and to tackle to think about, I'm going to come in low so I can injure a guy. That was I've been around a lot of players, and I've been a lot of, football teams and in different coaching mentalities. I mean, first and foremost is to get the guy down. And if you can't, force him back into your help. And if you have to go low, you have to go low. I don't think it's when guys get hurt because they get tackled low. I don't think it's ever a dirty play unless the guy's already down and you see some twisting of some sort. But you can't go high anymore. You can't risk that because the rulings on the targeting and is he defenseless? Is he a runner? That's so hard to judge, and we've seen the officials screw it up many times. So I'm going low. If I'm a secondary guy, I am. And if a guy gets hurt and you catch him he's planting wrong, or it's just the timing of things, that's the game of football, man. That's just what happens. It's a violent game. So I don't think I will never say that's a dirty play. I just think it's the world we live in now with guys don't want to get ejected or targeting, and you miss the rest of that game plus the second half of the other game. So no, I'm not. It's just unfortunate what happened to Bonner and what he's dealt with in the past. But listen, I'm teaching I'm coaching Little League football now, and I'm teaching guys to attack the hips. But if you can't get them down, you come in and out of control. At least try to go for their feet, go for their legs, and try to get them down. It's just is what it is, right? And you're trying to protect everybody, but that's just, you got to pick one or the other. You can't go for the head, so you got to go for somewhere else.
Jay, two-parter here because you piqued my thought with talking about stunts and how important they were to the 3-3-5. Gary and I were talking yesterday, and we both agree that Judy, definitely from a production standpoint, didn't have the best game. But, rewatching the tape, he was really effective on pass stunts and run stunts and being that guy who initiates the contact. So my first question is that an underrated skill, being kind of that stunter, if you will, the guy that hits to allow the D tackle to go around you? And is that something that even if Judy isn't performing and getting a ton of tackles, him being good at that, is that something that warrants him continuing to get playing time?
Yeah, I think so. Listen, running games and stunts, that's a skill, and that's a timing aspect, and it's one way. I think it has to be consistent across the board. It has to be taught consistent around the across the board. Games, you can't, if it's a pass rush stunt or a run game stunt, you can't go too early. You can't pop up. You can't shade to one side too quickly, or overlook or overshade to one area, because the alignment are going to pick it up. So there's definitely a skill to hiding it and to running it and executing it. Because if you're going to be the wrapper, let's say if he's the nose tackle, the shade, and he needs to set it up for the center, because usually there's going to be a guy coming down inside, so he wants to keep those eyes. The center has to be, his eyes need to be on the nose tackle at all times, because ideally you want whether it's the defensive tackle or the end that's coming down. We always taught him, you want to ear hole now the guy that's on the center.
Sure.
You want him to not see you coming, and then you can ricochet, you ear hole him, ricochet, get upfield, and that's how a lot of teams teach it. So, but if you pop up and you kind of like start wiggling around, well, guess what? His eyes are going right inside, because that this isn't normal. So
Sure.
that's a skill for everybody. But it's the same way for the end now. That's doing the same thing. He has to set the tackle up, so then that tackle or the defensive tackle or nose guard that's coming inside has to kind of do the same thing. So it's all you have to hide it. You can't show it too early. It's like a poker player, man. You gotta have a you got to hide it, right? You can't I can't tell it early. You can't do the certain things. So yeah, it's a skill. But I think production, that nose tackle position is hard. I think you look at Nash's numbers from the last couple of years. I mean, he made some great plays, and I think Elijah will make great plays. But sometimes you're at games like, where was Nash at? Well, he was also eating up a couple blocks and doing some things, the dirty work. So I'm not, again, yes, they have work to do up front, that defensive line. I think they got to kind of figure out who's going to handle the consistency of playing, 50, 60 snaps. Who can they rely on? Who can get off a block? Who can play tired and process all the information? But I'm not ready to completely overreact and say this D line is not good. I think there's plenty of talent there. They just got to figure out who can execute it the proper way. And I don't think effort was an issue either by anybody on that defense. I just think there's just got to be a more consistent effort to do things, just a little bit cleaner, and execute it just on a little higher level. And I think they'll be fine.
Hey, appreciate as always dropping the knowledge. Thank you.
Yep, you got it, guys.
Thank you, Jay.
That's Jay Moore.